Welcome to another episode of Alpha Intuition Podcast. We empower you to become the CEO of your life. I'm your host, Keisha L. Blair, #1 life balancing coach and certified extreme execution coach. And today I have a special guest for you guys. Joining us is a true powerhouse in leadership and motivational speaking. He is the owner of RJP Consulting Group and award-winning international speaker known for his dynamic approach to leadership development. He's a master at engaging teams, reducing turnover, and increasing productivity using his C.A.R.E framework, which stands for Coach, Appreciate, Redirect, and Elevate. He's worked with top organizations, including credit unions, law firms, and insurance agencies, transforming managers into leaders and driving success. Alpha Intuition family, it is my honor to introduce to you my good friend and colleague from Next Level Speakers Academy, Mr. Ralphe Jean-Poix, or as I like to call him, Mr. RJP, the classic man. What's up, bro?
I am well. How are you? It's an honor to be here.
Doing good. All right, man. So I hope you like that intro that I gave. I tried
like
to be
it.
suave and sappy about it.
Yeah, that was real suave. I think some of the stuff you put in there was just immaculate. So I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. All right, so we're gonna just jump right into it. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready to have a good time, ready to just empower people, inspire people, and just really help make a difference in somebody's life. And I'm honored to be on a Alpha Intuition podcast with you, Keisha. It's going to be a great time.
Man, that's right. All right. So I remember the first time I saw you speak, we were in Cancun last year, and I'm like, oh my God, this man is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there like, man, this was probably one of the best workshops that I think I've been to where I got so much out of it. So what I want to ask you about is, I'm gonna start off with asking you just about, let's talk about your journey into leadership and basically what was that one defining moment that I think you told me about, or you mentioned, or it was a workshop or something that made you decide that you wanted to make a difference in people's lives?
For sure. Yeah. So the defining moment for me was a company brought me in to do a workshop because the manager, we had a conversation and she was saying, hey, team morale is low. They're not engaged. We need you to come in here and fix these people. And I was like, okay, we'll do our best. So I set up this workshop and we started with doing icebreakers because, people want to build a sense of security for people, right? So if you go in just like, okay, here's the issues and how can we fix them? A lot of times you don't get a positive response to that. So you have to establish it. And the other thing too is these people don't know you. You're a complete stranger to them. So icebreakers is a great way to bring the human side of you out and theirs as well. So we did an icebreaker. And then afterwards, before we get into like the hard topics, I remember I asked them a very simple question. At least in my mind, it was simple, but it turned out to be something that really changed my whole life. I asked everyone in that room, once I established safety in that room, I asked, what is one word you would use to describe your environment? I didn't want to know just what their manager thought. I wanted to know what they thought, what the people thought. So I asked them and I passed out the sticky notes. I said, whenever you're ready, I want you to head on over to my board and I'm going to turn around. I just want you to put what is one word that you would use to describe your environment. And so I gave them the time, and little by little, people went up there, and they only went up there because, again, I had established some level of safety in the room. They went up there and they put their sticky notes on the board. When I turned around, Keisha, that's the moment that I understood something very, very powerful about leadership. When I turned around to see what is the one word they would use to describe their environment, I still remember, I still have the picture to this day. I saw on the board toxic, stressful, lack of communication, favoritism, mismanagement, and just all words that you would never want to see as part of an environment. I remember.
Sounds like a typical day in a corporate world, right?
Well, it depends on the department. It depends on the leader, right? So I remember looking at that board, hoping that something positive would have popped up, but I kid you not, nothing positive popped up. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, it is my duty to make sure that if anyone ever feels like those words, that have an outlet, but also that the leader is aware of what's going on so that way they can attempt to do something about it. Here's what was crazy for me. When I debrief with the leader later on that afternoon, and of course you can't say everything, but you have to give them something to start working on. I shared some of the sentiments and that person was shocked. And I was shocked that they were shocked because I'm thinking, if your environment's like that, how do you not know? And I remember that day I thought, okay, here's the difference. there were managers in that room, but what that room was missing was leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Realize that there's times where you can be in charge of the room, but not know the temperature of the room. And that's dangerous for a leader, to be in charge of a place, but not know the temperature of the place. And so I told myself, I need to make sure that every leader that I come into contact with, not only do they feel like they're in charge of the room, but they also know the temperature of the room.
I like that. So when you say if they're in charge of the room and they don't know the temperature, is that more of like a dictatorship?
Well, sometimes it's lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but some people, and to your point, some people focus more on just being in charge of the room. Like, I just want everybody to know that I'm in charge. I just want you to know that I am the whatever title you want to put behind it. But do I really know how my people feel? Do I really know what they're going through? Do I really know why we can't meet our goals? Do I really know why so and so keeps showing up late? Do I really know why these people don't talk to these people? And I think the awareness piece of it is important. It's not just about your title. And that's what I say all the time. Leadership is not just about your title and your tenure. It's about your influence. And then part of that too is like, how aware are you of the environment that you've been made responsible for?
Yeah. So when you think about leaders, at what level do you think leaders face the most challenges? Is it when they
Ooh,
first get into management, or is it as they move
yeah.
up the ladder? Or is it because first you have a team,
Yeah.
and then you may get into a space to where you manage others that manage people,
Yeah.
and then you become it as you elevate, even though your you may have more people on your team, but your immediate direct report team may be smaller. So,
Yeah.
what level do you think leaders experience the most difficulty?
I think the answer to that is subjective. My answer would be the more responsibility, the more challenges.
Hmm.
And I think so part of that too is I also think that the higher up you go, sometimes the lonelier it gets, right? So the CEO doesn't always have the people that he or she needs to go to when they are having those tough decisions that they need to make, right? So that's why I always recommend, especially the executives, I mean, you got to have a little community. You got to have some other folks that when you feel alone in this decision making process, you got to have somebody that you can talk to. So, and not to say that you don't face challenges early on, because I think there's a gap that happens. You go from being a high performer and now you're the manager or you're the supervisor. Yeah, there's a huge gap that happens there. But I think the higher up you go, you're making decisions that not only impact your department, you're making decisions that impact the organization as a whole. You're making decisions that impact how the perception of the organization, your competitors, and so on and so forth. So I think that level of stress, a lot of supervisors, you don't experience that. You don't, supervisors and managers, a lot of times, you don't think about just the overall brand. You might think about your branch or your department, but the CEO and the people that are like, the senior executives, they have to think about how the market sees this place. And I think there's a level of stress that comes with that sometimes is heavy, very heavy.
I'm going to tell you this. I think there were two times, just from my own experience as I climbed the corporate ladder, that I faced challenges. One was managing people that I used to work side by side with.
That's a huge
Managing your peers. That
yeah.
was that was one of the things that was huge for me, is managing my peers. And then also, as I climb a ladder, like you mentioned, just having someone that you can talk to in those moments when you
Yeah.
need to just vent or just to work things out without worrying whether or not that person's going to stab you in the back.
Right. And trusting.
Yes.
Because here's what we used to say in corporate all the time. We say complaints go up, they don't go down. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
But if you're all the way at the top, where's up?
Where's up?
Where's up? Who do I talk to? And if you want to make sure that you have a very genuine, honest, transparent conversation, and you want to keep it in that space that you shared it in, that's difficult for a lot of executives. Very, very difficult. Because they're human too. They have moments where they want to say what they feel, but a lot of times they have to, suppress that and compress that. And that's difficult. That's difficult.
Yeah, I've worked in leadership, and most of my leadership has been in the maintenance realm,
Yeah.
right? So maintenance people are a little bit more rough around the edges than your typical corporate person.
Yeah.
So even though we get into the corporate world and we move up, so sometimes that briskness does still come out. I
Yeah.
have had leaders who have actually spoke their mind very colorfully.
Color,
And me,
I like
it's
that.
like,
Colorfully.
whoa, it's like, did you
Yeah.
just say that?
But
And
that's
it's
a challenge
like,
too.
yeah, because
That's a
they're under
challenge in
stress.
itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
on how to balance that. Because as from my perspective, I'm thinking like, okay, do I feel connected because this person feels comfortable enough to vent and share this, or do
Yeah.
I go to HR? It's
Right.
like, which one is it? You got to find that balance.
It's blurred. Like, yeah, you got real, but maybe did you get a little too, like, did you blur the lines? Now
Hmm.
you went from being transparent to disrespectful, right?
Yes.
You went from being transparent to, okay, you don't think there's any boundaries. You just dismiss all of that, and you said what you wanted to say regardless of how people felt. Like, you weren't aware. So yeah, that can be difficult too. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. So I want to talk about now. Let's talk about your care framework.
Yeah.
And how did you evolve into this framework, and basically just talk about where it started and where it is
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, for sure. So here's my thoughts on leadership. I always say that, again, like I said earlier, leadership is not about tenure. It's not about your corner office. It's not about, all these things that we've made it about. To me, leadership comes down to influence. And a lot of leaders over the years, I'm not the first person to say that. A lot of leaders over the years have said leadership is about influence. And influence is your ability to just get people on board, just to bring something out of people that maybe they didn't even know they had in themselves. So the C.A.R.E framework came from after I sat and thought about that room that I was in, when the people said their environment was toxic, their environment was stressful, their environment had no communication, and so on and so forth. I thought about myself, what was missing? And I said, yeah, a leader was missing. I was like, okay, yeah, but what is a leader? That's a question. Like, what's a leader? What's a leader? In my mind, I say, and everyone may not agree with me, but in my mind, here's what I say. Everyone's a leader. Some of
Hmm.
us are just doing a really bad job,
Mm.
because every one of us has some level of influence, right? Even if you don't. Now, here's the thing. You may not be a manager, but you're still a leader. Are you doing a good job with the level of influence that you have? So then I went on a quest to answer the question of what is a leader? And then I thought about, okay, that environment had a manager, but didn't have an effective leader. What would have been good? And I asked myself some questions. And this, I'll be honest with you, Keisha, this is through reflection, through prayer, and just really sitting down with it. And I came up with the acronym. A leader is someone who has decided. So that's the number one thing. You have to make a decision to do something with your influence. So a
Hmm.
leader is someone who has decided to coach. That's number one. For
Hmm.
me, that's important because people have to see that you have the ability to pour something into them. That's usually what attracts them to you, right? You can be really kind, but if you can't teach me nothing, at some point, I'm going to disconnect. So that's why C is first. A leader is someone who has decided to coach. And then I say, once you coach, you're going to teach people stuff. They're going to need to get some feedback from you. And we need to do a good job appreciating people, because especially in my travels in corporate, I can't tell you how many times people leave. And when you ask them, why did you leave your job? Why did you leave this department? Why did you check out? And they said, I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel
Mm.
appreciated. When we look at the reasons why people leave a workplace, a lot of times it's going to be pay, it's going to be managers, because we say this all the time. People don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And that's true. But sometimes people don't leave managers, they leave jobs because it no longer fits them, right? But a lot of times, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see other reasons why people leave. Lack of appreciation
Mhm.
is usually in the top 10. So here's why it's dangerous. You'll spend all that time coaching people, but because you didn't show them any appreciation, they didn't feel valued, they leave. So I ask
Mhm.
leaders, number one, coach and be coachable. A is show appreciation, because people want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like they belong. And then that earns you the right to redirect people. The thing that I say all the time that people always ask me, yo, can you say that one more time? Because I like how you said that. I tell folks, so when you coach and appreciate people, it allows them to build trust for you, right? Because that you have something in you that you've passed on to them, but then you've also given them the affirmations that they need, the reassurance that they need. Hey, you're doing a great job. And sometimes we overcomplicate appreciation, and we shouldn't. Appreciation is simply seeing what the person did and acknowledging it. We don't have
Knowledge.
to. You don't have to make it overly complex. We're not asking you to write love letters to people. We're not saying that you need to take out a billboard and put their name on it. We're saying, are you aware enough to see what they've done and what they've done well and acknowledge it? That earns you trust with the person. What I say is, sometimes we try to redirect as leaders and it fails. And I say redirection without trust is scolding, but
Mm.
redirection with trust is molding. So if you're trying to redirect people and you're seeing it's not effective, then I have to ask you as a leader, how good of a job have you done at coaching? How good of a job have you done at appreciating? Because you got the redirection too quickly. I've had people try to redirect me, and I look back and it didn't work because it's like, one, I don't think you have
You
the
don't know me like
information.
that.
You don't know me like that, and also right, you don't know me like that. That's as real as it gets. And the other point is the times where I have taken your advice, I don't feel valued when I'm in your presence. So it's hard for you to redirect me. So once we coach, we appreciate, we redirect, then I ask leaders to elevate people, take them from where they are to where they need to be. And that's how I define a leader. A leader is someone who's made the conscious decision to coach, appreciate, redirect, and elevate. And that's how the framework came to life.
That's powerful. That is
Yeah.
that is extremely powerful. Um, when I think about I always say just because someone is motivated to come to work doesn't mean they're going to be motivated to go above and beyond. So all
No.
those things that you mentioned,
Yeah.
that is the difference between being a manager and being a leader. That can be the huge difference between someone coming to work every day and they're going to show up, but they're not going to do anything. They're
Right.
going to do just enough to stay employed, as opposed to that person who will raise their hand every time you need somebody, and they
Yeah.
will be there for you because they know that you care about them. So
They
that is
do.
the perfect framework name. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I ask, and again, play on the words, but I'm going to ask you as a leader, how much do you care? So I'm asking you two
Mhm.
questions. I'm asking you about my framework, and I'm asking you like the literal word care. How much do you coach? How much do you appreciate? How much you redirect? How much you elevate? And then I'm also asking you, do you care enough to care? Do you care enough to coach, to appreciate, to redirect, to elevate? Because like you said, Keisha, humans, I used to teach this workshop where we talk about humans have two needs. We have in the workplace, we have two needs. We have practical needs, but we also have personal needs.
Mhm.
When people come to work and they feel like you value them, you get the best out of them. That's
That's
just what it
right.
is. It's not just about meeting the numbers. It's not just about the goals. It's do I feel like you as a leader appreciate what it is that I do? And once they feel that, I'm telling you, team engagement, team morale, people will stay. You don't have to ask them to stay. They just do what the environment demands. And we
And
can't neglect that.
I'm going to tell you this. I've had leaders to where I would have moved mountains for them because
Yeah.
I knew that they not only cared about the work that I did, but they cared
Mhm.
about me as a person. If I
As
had
a
personal
person.
problems, they cared about what I was going through and how I overcame those challenges, even when I wasn't at work.
Yeah.
And that's huge for some people, to when you have someone to where they only care about the numbers, they only care about the bottom line, and they don't think about you. You're just another number. You're not
Yeah.
a person. And that's the difference to me between a manager and a leader. You can
Yeah.
manage. I can give you a policy book, and you can teach or talk policy all day long,
For
but
sure.
that doesn't make you a leader.
No, not at all. Or not at least not an effective one.
Not an effective one.
Not an effective
Correct.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Um, Made me think of a story that when I worked in the hotels, I worked in Rancho Mirage, California, and
Mhm.
one of my very first managers well, actually, someone that got me into management out of the construction world. And he had this knack for making. He was just he can be very stern, but also motivating at the same time. So
Yeah.
he's someone that I always think about, and he would always turn the situation back on himself. That's something that I learned from him, to where it's like it wasn't always about what went wrong; it was about how it affected everybody on the team, including him. So
Yeah.
that was something that I learned from him, and I think about those moments to where he would always just tell me, just make sure that when you coach someone, or you have a situation to where you have to coach and counsel, you just let them know that it's not more so about what they've done wrong, but okay, this is how it's affecting me. This is how it's affecting the team, and this is what we can do to move past this. And you set those boundaries in place, and then you put um, a step or a process together to help that person grow. So I always
Yeah.
thought about, just thinking about one of my first I've been in management since I was 18, but I consider that my first real management job because I was responsible for 65 people,
Yeah.
and as a frontline manager. So that took me from thinking about being a manager to being a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And what that person did is they coached you, but they also introduced you to what coaching looks like. Because they
Absolutely.
deposited something in you that years later you still value, and you can carry it on to future environments and so on and so forth, and you can pass it on to other leaders. That's what coaching is. Like, what are lessons that you've learned that were difficult or easy, and then how can you impart those into somebody else so that way you can make them better at whatever it is that they do. And then I tell folks all the time, it's not, coaching is not about just telling people what to do. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about showing them what to do. And then even more importantly, it's about knowing when to come alongside them and then knowing when to let their hands go. That's the issue that when you talk to folks who, you know, people describe them as micromanagers, that's the issue that they have. A lot of times micromanagers have good intentions. They have good intentions. It's just how they execute. They just don't let go at any point throughout the process. Like they just they feel like I have to be involved because at the end of the day, they want things to be done well. But here's the issue with that. The issue with that is you'll never get a chance to elevate somebody if you're a micromanager.
That's very, very, very. Look, I'm going to say this. I've actually been accused of micromanaging, and I've been micromanaged myself.
Yeah.
And I always laugh when someone calls me a micromanager because one of the questions that I always have when I have someone who's responsible for managing others come or approach me with a problem and expect me to solve it for them.
Yeah.
I always laugh, and I just turn around and I ask the question that was asked of me the first time I did it to my upper management team. And the question that I was asked is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So you're bringing me a problem, but like you said, I have my own problems. I don't need your problems. So I can help you, but don't come to me with just a problem. Come to me with a problem with some solutions that we can work through to figure out which one is the best course of action for you to take. But you're going to have to put some thought into it. So that's the one thing that you know, and that's really why I love working with new managers, because new managers don't think about that. They go from being the worker bees or just someone who's task oriented to now you have to think about it from a more psychological approach on how you're going to resolve issues.
Yeah.
It's not just get it done. It's like, how should I get it done? Why should I get it done? And when? So I always ask that question. Okay, so you have a problem, but what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And the first time, every time I say it to new managers, they just look at me like a deer in headlights. Like, well, that's what I'm talking to you for. Okay, well, let's talk it through.
well, let me say this. So with micromanagers, right? And that's the thing. Some of these things are so subjective. Like you and I, you could be my manager. I call you a micromanager. Somebody else says, man, Keisha's the best manager I've ever. Because what we got to remember is people's previous experiences are also important. What if, Keisha, I came from an environment where my manager never checked on me at all? They just let me do whatever I want. We didn't have no team meetings. We didn't have no development plan. We didn't have any of that. So I was given free reign. And now I come to Keisha's team and Keisha wants to do check-ins
every week.
every Wednesday. You want to meet up. You want to say things like, hey, how are things going? You know, can I get an update?
Before? No.
Yeah, can I get an update? So from my perspective, I came from an environment where I had I wouldn't even call it autonomy. Here's the truth. The truth is the previous environment, I was neglected. But I called it freedom. Nobody ever checked up on me. So now I'm with Keisha, and Keisha, I might say Keisha's doing the most. So it's subjective. So then we have to understand when people say, okay, when folks tell me, well, I feel like I'm being micromanaged, I need you to describe to me what's happening. Because I can't put that label on it until I understand what it is that's happening. Now, are there leaders who are micromanagers? Yes, because the person that they were led by told them that you need to make sure you have your hands in everything. So they learned from a coach that didn't do a good job. You know what I mean? So that's why I like my job, especially when I work with leaders and folks who are looking to step into management, is to understand perspective. When you say micromanage, what does that mean? And then you brought up an important point. When people come to you and they say, hey, you know, I have a problem, Keisha, and your one of your first questions is, you know, how would you solve it? Or what did you think? And so on and so forth. I love that question because a lot of times it gets people thinking, because a lot of times what you're also doing is you're giving people permission to think.
Correct.
Again, I want you to think about, for some people, that question shuts them down. You know why? Because they've never been given the permission to think.
Because they're used to being micromanaged.
They're used to being micromanaged. So now when Keisha says, well, how would you solve it, Ralphe? Ralphe goes, I don't know. I've always gone to my manager to be able to solve it.
Told me what to do.
Yeah. So that's the awareness piece that I keep talking about as a leader. You have to coach, you have to appreciate, you have to redirect, you have to elevate for sure. Your awareness has to be high, and you can't treat all employees as a one-size-fits-all approach. You can't do that. because then you're going to miss out on opportunity to make a difference in that person's life.
Absolutely. And you brought up a very valid point. You cannot treat everybody on the team the same because they're not.
No. Yeah.
So, um, I always coach other managers on their journey to leadership. When you take over a team,
Mhm.
don't go in being the hard person making all these changes,
Yeah.
because you're going and making all these changes,
Yeah.
and those things may have been done before, but you won't know it because you're so worried about you and you're not thinking about the team. Think
Right.
about the team, talk to your team. And one of the first things that I do after I do my one-on-ones with everybody on the team, and I have that first group meeting, I look in the room to see who the real leader is, because the leader is not me. It's
Yeah.
somebody on the team. Because if that person doesn't like me, nobody else is going to like me. So
Yeah.
I have to think about find that leader, and you have to make sure you win that person over, because if you win that one person over, you're going to win everybody else over on the
Yes.
team, because that
Yes.
person is the real leader, not you.
And I like how you said find a leader, not the manager. Find a leader. Sometimes
Mhm,
the leader is the manager. Sometimes
mhm,
the manager is not the leader. It's not the
mhm,
effect. So I remember doing a workshop. This was about 2 months ago. I was working with a credit union. I was doing a workshop, and I asked them an important question because they brought me in so I can talk about change management in terms of,
mhm.
we're going through new systems, new platforms, new policies, whatever. People are receptive to change. Okay, let's have the conversation. And towards the end, I was like, who is responsible for culture? Because we talked about changing culture, and they're like, everybody. And I said, okay, but who can change culture? They're like, everybody. I was like, nope, that's not true. Everybody cannot change culture. The person with the most influence is the people that can change culture. So even in a small setting, if you're able to identify, like you said, Keisha, the person with influence, if you're able to ask them questions and you see them engage, just watch everybody around them. It's almost like they're the ones that give other people permission to engage as well. So if you're aware enough to understand who has influence in the room, then you can get the desired results. But again, you got to be aware. You can't treat everybody in like a one size fits all approach.
Yeah, because somebody may need you to give them just a little bit more appreciation than you give the next person. You may have
Yeah.
somebody that needs just a little bit more hand holding than someone who may be, more self sufficient and autonomous than the next person. So it's all about the manager being aware of everybody that's on their team
Yeah.
and making sure that they assess each person individually.
And that's why we do these assessments. And I have no issues with the assessments. I think the assessments are a really good foundational piece. But I always ask leaders, you got to rise above the assessments. You got to know people. You got to know Keisha,
Hmm.
not just, okay. So there's a bunch of different assessments out there and they're amazing. Like I know you're very familiar with the one that Dr. Eric Thomas has, right? The flight
Oh yeah,
assessment.
I'm a trained
Um,
execution coach. That's my
right.
jam.
Okay, coach. That's awesome. And there's like the disc assessment. I used to do one, it was about animals. It's like sharks, dolphins, sea urchins, and whales. Right. So
Mm,
your sharks are like your decision makers, your go-getters. Your dolphins are your people who love to have fun. They're the more influential people. Your whales are gonna be your more, friendly, caring for others, making sure everybody's good on the team. And then your sea urchins are gonna be more analytical. And I would tell the leaders, I need you to know more than that. I don't want you to just say, oh, Keisha's a shark. I want you to know Keisha beyond those descriptors, and then be able to operate and communicate with Keisha based off of the needs that you've identified that this person needs. Because, like you said, some employees, when we talk about appreciation, I think appreciation is foundational, right? But how you display appreciation is different. Some employees will prefer public appreciation,
mhm.
some will prefer private. Like I've had coworkers who, if you give them a shout out in front of everybody else, they get nervous, they turn
Yep.
red, they get shy, they feel like it's too much. But if you call them into the office and give them that same appreciation, makes their day. So, do you know your people well enough to truly make a difference in the environment?
Absolutely. That
Mhm.
that's so funny you say that. It just made me think about going to a new church and people want you to stand up because you're a visitor. It's like, oh my God, I want to stand up. But if the pastor were to come up to you afterwards, you'd
Right.
be like more than welcome to talk to him and have a great conversation about what you thought about his message that day. But if he asked
Yeah.
you to stand up there, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to stand up and say my name. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But then you got the brother who dresses up real sharp, hoping that they would tell him to stand up because he want everybody to see this combination that he put together.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I do with leaders. I help them consider all, as many perspectives as possible, and then we got to make a decision. Yeah.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing. All right, I want to move on to our next topic. I know me and you can chop up leadership all day
Oh, for
long.
sure. I love this. I love it.
So I want to talk about just leading through personal adversities and the impact that emotional intelligence plays on that,
Yeah.
especially from a leadership perspective, because sometimes people on your team, they don't understand emotional intelligence. But as leaders, we have to be aware of who we are and who everybody else is. And then when we have our own personal challenges, it's like, oh, you have to still regulate your own emotions in dealing with people. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah, so I remember years back we did some work with one of the credit unions, and we did some work, and we had somebody come in and do one of those assessments for us. I believe it was called predictive index is what it was. And we
Hmm.
had a separate conversation with him, and he was saying, "Do you know the number one skill that we've recognized that leaders lack?" I said, "What? You throw out whatever you think." And he goes, "It's self-awareness." Self-awareness is the number one skill that we've realized that leaders do not have. So
Hmm.
will you go through personal adversity? Yes, you will. But a lot of times, because we don't have self-awareness, we don't even realize what we're going through and how it can be perceived by others. Like, because it's like we just go about our day, and then at the end of the day, we don't realize why we felt so weighted, why we felt so fatigued, why we felt so tense, because your level of self-awareness is really, really low. So when
Hmm.
I teach a workshop on EQ, it's a really, really good book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I love that book. It talks about the four quadrants: self-awareness, self-management, which is the next piece. So now that you're aware of how you feel, you're going through this adversity, do you have the tools to be able to control how you talk to the people on your team, how you talk to clients, how you talk to the people that you report to? Do you have the ability to control that? What I say is, you're allowed to feel whatever it is that you feel, whatever it is. I don't believe there's such a thing as good or bad emotions. Emotions, because you talked about the gentleman that shows up to the church, and that just made me think of something my pastor said once. My pastor once said, emotions are indicators, not dictators. Emotions are indicators, not dictators, which
Okay.
means we don't have to act on every emotion that we feel. You're entitled to feel it, but you don't have to act on every emotion. You don't have to embody every emotion that you feel. So when we're going through personal adversity, I think self-awareness is important. We need to acknowledge what it is that we're feeling. And then the second piece of it is we need to understand that, man, I could really do or say something that could now bring adversity to the environment that I'm a part of. So will
Mm.
you face adversity as a leader? Absolutely. But you need to be aware of how it is that you feel. And then you need to have that self-management to say, you know what? I may not be able to attend this meeting today, because if I do, I might pop off. You
You
know
might have
what?
a real those wrong moment.
Right, right. Or this coaching moment that I needed to have with this employee, I'm gonna push it to 3 o'clock instead of having it right now at 10 o'clock, because if I have it right now, I'm not so sure I can manage the things that I'm going to say. Right. So I think personal adversity is going to happen, but we still have a role to play, and we still have people who depend on us to not lash out, to not do these things. And then the other part is, of course, that goes back to that community. I don't care what level of the organization you're in. You need to have some trusted people. When things get real, you got to be able to have some of those conversations.
That's true.
Of,
I
of course,
agree with that.
yeah, of course, knowing what to say and what not to say. You can't give them all the information. Some things are confidential, right? But you got to have an outlet. We encourage leaders to have an outlet. Your outlet might be you go for a walk. Your outlet might be you read a book. Your outlet might mean you go out for some coffee. Your outlet might mean you go out and just meditate, pray, sing, whatever you need to do to not create a perception in the minds of the people that you lead that cannot be erased. Because people are
Yes.
not very forgiving towards leaders. The
They hold
standard
it
is
to
different.
a higher standard. That's
The
right. They
standard is
hold it to a
different.
higher standard.
Once you do this one thing that lash out, they tend to forget all the other moments that you've had, right? And I'm not saying that you need to be perfect. I'm saying we need to be aware and then do our best to regulate, because
Yeah.
adversity is gonna happen. Some days, you might need to take a day off. You should definitely take a day off. You
Look,
might
so
need to go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you might need to step away for a little bit, because you're going through something that's very personal, that may be very traumatic, and you cannot handle. And some people be like, well, you need to be tough enough. Okay, there's times where as a leader, you might not be able to be tough enough. And that's okay. That's okay.
I was just going to say, thinking back to my construction days, one thing, as an apprentice, apprentices would do so many things, and we would, always want to get the attaboys and the pats on the back. And a journeyman would always say, it only takes one screw up to ruin 10 attaboys. It's like you could get 10 pats on the back, but you screw up that one time, it could follow you throughout your entire career. And that's true in leadership, to where you can say those things and you can actually do the best you can, but you messed up one time and it will ruin. It can be a career limiting or a career ending move.
Absolutely. And the truth is, it's not fair. It's not fair. But here's a hard reality. Nobody cares.
Shout out to CJ.
Shout out to CJ, right? Nobody cares until you make them care. Shout out to the legendary CJ. But the truth, it's not fair. It's not fair because I've done so much, but then this one thing you will want to put this on top of my legacy, right? So again, we're not asking leaders to be perfect, but we're saying when you're going through adversity, first I need you to be able to recognize it, and then I need you to be able to regulate to the ability in the degree that you can. And what that looks like for you is, again, it might look like, you know what? I can't have this coaching call right now. I'm going to push it to 3 o'clock rather than having it at 11 o'clock. I need to go for a walk first. I need to read an article first. I need to call another CEO friend first.
I've dealt with it. I'm sure in your leadership journey, you probably dealt with it too. You have those people that just push your buttons on purpose just to see if they can get you to step outside of your boundaries that you've set for yourself to not respond or react, and they'll continue to keep pressing your buttons. How do you deal with that?
Oh man, I've definitely dealt with that because over the years, Keisha, I've developed I call it my professional voice and tone, right? So whenever I'm feeling something on the inside, it's almost like I turn on a switch of calmness. I may not be truly calm on the inside, but what you're gonna get from me is a very slow pace conversation. Like you've made me upset. Like, hey, Keisha, I just want to let you know that right now is not a good time for this conversation. I would definitely love to continue this further. Can we schedule something? But on the inside, I am boiling. But I just know that if I reflect what I feel, I can't take that back. So in those moments where people push my buttons, it's not a persona that I've created. It's just I've created guardrails for myself.
I'm going to tell you this, in the world of flight assessment, we call that operating in the adaptive.
Okay.
People have pushed you outside of your natural element to where you show up as Ralphe. You know who you are as a leader. You know how to help people. You're in your care mode. You're coaching, appreciating, redirecting, and elevating. And then you got that one person that comes along and just decides he wants to try to throw you off your game that day. So instead of you just being this fun, happy, fun-loving guy, you just get a little bit soft and you get a little bit more direct. That's your adaptive.
So that's my adaptive. Okay. Yeah. Then
I operate
in my adaptive.
You're uncomfortable in that moment, but you're still handling it.
Yeah.
And you're self-analyzing. You're self-aware of what's going on.
Very
and
self-aware.
You're trying to operate in that moment. Yes.
Yeah. It's like I choose my words carefully. They come out one by one because I don't want you to walk away from that moment and say he was aggressive. He was, whatever other words you want to describe me as. No, I actually have practiced this moment in my head. So I know what the outcome should be. I've slowed down my breathing. I slow down my talking. This is a very calm moment. I've practiced this.
That's funny. And I'm sitting here laughing because I do the same thing. I tend to get, when I have those moments, I do get a little bit more calmer than normal. And my speech, I talk fast by nature. I stutter, do all that stuff, but I calm down and I start to speak a little bit slower, and I'm going to smile a lot. Because I don't want you to think I'm aggressive. I don't want you to think I'm angry, but I am very, very intentional about what I am about to say. And I'm what I say, because I say what I mean.
and after I have that moment, I'm gonna need to walk.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna need to deflate.
Hopefully you're at a company that has a gym, because you might need to go for a run on the treadmill.
Right. I need a moment.
That is too funny. We've always experienced moments like that. So let's talk about, when you have those moments to where you're dealing with personal stuff and life gets hard, and you still got to show up to work. You still have to be a leader because, like you said, right, nobody cares. And you still got a job to do. You still have people to lead. And so how do you handle those moments? How do you stay focused as a leader when life gets hard?
Yeah. Man, this is about to Yeah, it's about to get real. So I'll tell you one of the hardest, and maybe it might bring on some tears. I don't know. We'll see. One of the
I got some
hardest
tissue right
things.
here.
You gonna send me some virtually? One of the hardest days of work for me was, I remember my wife and I. She was this was like let me see, about 6.5 years ago. So we were expecting our first child, and over the moon excited, and we got the news that the pregnancy was not going to come. It wasn't going to happen. And so what I remember doing at that time, we and again, one of the hardest things you realize is it's crazy, because sometimes when you're first facing certain levels of adversity, you feel like your world stopped. But if you take a glance outside, you realize the world stopped for you. It kept going for everybody else. The world did not stop. In
Mhm.
your moment, it felt like it stopped. And so in those moments, my world stopped. And I remember, we went through and did the whatever procedure needed to be done, and comforted my wife and all that. But the next day I had to be, or 2 days later, I had to be at work. So I'm looking through my employee handbook to see what are the could I take leave for this? Because I'm not
Mhm.
I'm going through a lot. Could I take leave? And I looked in through our employee handbook, and at that time there was nothing that I could do. So I had to show up to work on that Monday.
Mhm.
And I remember it was one of the hardest days of work for me, because I would
Wow.
much rather be at home with my wife, consoling my wife, dealing with my emotions, dealing with my feelings. Not only do I have to show up to work, but I also have to show up in front of people, because I wasn't in one of those roles where I just sit and, I sit and process, or sit and, just have my moment. I was in a role that was very visible to people. So what I had to tell myself in that moment is realize that even though my world had stopped, the world had not stopped. I
Mm.
had to focus on the mission at hand and tell myself, just in this moment, I need you to, minute by minute, just be brave enough to be there, and then
Wow.
take the break that you need when you need it. But moment by moment, just right now, I just need you to be, I don't want you to think about what the whole day is going to look like, Ralph. I just want you to be brave enough to be in this current moment. And what I was doing is, as I was, facilitating my classes and so on and so forth, it's almost like me living up to my purpose in that moment was somehow therapeutic. And then
Mm.
you got to go deal with all the stuff afterwards, because just being in that moment is not going to heal you. You know what I mean? So for me, what I tell leaders is, in moments of adversity, when you have to show up, there has to be a bigger purpose that draws you to that moment. What's
Yeah.
the bigger purpose? What's the mission? Why are you there that day? And that's why I always tell folks, like when I worked for the credit union, we'd have people who are maybe in a role where they say, "Oh, okay, I'm just a teller. I'm just a teller." And I would tell them, "Don't say that. You're
Mhm.
not just anything. You're not, don't put just before any of your titles, because what you're doing is important. You're allowing people to have access to their funds, or I'm just an application taker. No, you're actually creating opportunities for people. You
Exactly.
have the opportunity to educate people, because some people come in here and the tools and resources that you have, they've never been exposed to. So you're not just anything. You have the opportunity to potentially change somebody's life. So take the word just out of it. And I have to focus on the bigger mission and the vision to be able to just be brave enough to be in that moment and take that break when I need it. And that was
Yeah.
hard. That was hard.
One of the hardest things to do, because it sounds like you had to compartmentalize, and sometimes it's very, very difficult for a leader to have to you have to think about the big picture, and you have to
Yeah.
compartmentalize, or take that energy, whatever it is you're feeling, and turn it into something that will help push
Yeah.
you, at least, like you said, moment by moment, day by
Moment by
day.
moment. Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
not thinking about the whole day. And I learned that. Um, I just had to, just like I said, be brave enough for that moment, and then just keep multiplying that. And then the day went okay. And then when I got home, I had to deal with what I was feeling, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People think about it's almost like when you have a really good leader, you almost look at that person like a superhero, and you don't
Hmm.
expect them to have problems. You don't think that they go through things. They don't
Yeah.
have to deal with heartache or have to deal with trauma or
Right.
triggers, or because you look up to them, so you expect them to be what you want them to
Yeah.
be, as opposed to them being who they really are.
Yeah. The other part of that too is sometimes leaders take on that role of superhuman, where they
Mhm.
feel like, well, if I let them know about my difficult days, then they won't see me as the leader anymore. So it's
Yes,
like, I want to be vulnerable. I want to be transparent, but there's a price. I think there's a price I'm going to pay for that. You know what I mean? And what I caution leaders is, again, transparency is not about coming to work and telling people what you did on the weekends and open up every page of the book of your life. That's not what it's about. But being honest and being human and being discerning in how much you tell people, there's a lot of power in that. Because here's
absolutely.
here's the truth. The truth is, I don't think you're a superhero. At the core, I don't think my manager's a superhero.
Mhm.
But if you want to portray it like you are, then I'm gonna keep going with that flow as well. But I don't think you're a
Yeah,
super, because I know nobody's a superhero.
that's right.
But if that's the image we've created in our environment, then I'll go with the flow. At some point, we gotta the human piece is what the human piece is what draws the connections. It's not the goal. It's now, I'm not saying we shouldn't set goals. Of course we should set goals. We're an organization, we
Mhm.
run a business, we have numbers to meet. We're gonna set goals. Absolutely. But what really connects people is not the goal that you set 3 months ago. It's the conversation that we have outside of the goals that we set. It's the safety that I feel. It's the appreciation that I feel. It's the comfort that I feel. It's the value that I feel when I come into this place. That's what really connects people. And because I feel that, then that light turns on, and then I meet the goals and I exceed the goals. And I want to be here again next year. And I want to be in other positions and I want to grow and I want to do all these things. We can't neglect the personal needs that people have in the workplace. We can't do
Exactly.
that.
And all of that, when you have those conversations and you have a manager who is transparent and someone who is vulnerable with you, like you said, who helps you to grow, what it causes you to do, it causes you to execute. It makes you
Execute.
want to show up and show out.
Yes. Keisha, I've I've done things that my manager never asked me to do,
Absolutely.
that they didn't have to ask me to do.
You
Because
just
now
knew
it's
it was
like, man,
done.
not only do I feel like I gotta show up for this organization, now I feel like I gotta show up for you. You didn't even ask me to do that. I feel like I'm working hard for your brand to be elevated now, because I feel like you care about me and us, the whole team. You care about us. So now I'm gonna give you everything I got. Not because you set some goal, but because I feel like you genuinely care about us as people.
I know. I think that when I started managing managers, my job, I felt like, was to get them to understand that they now decided to take part or ownership in the piece of the business. And
Yeah.
this is your piece of the business. This is
Yes.
not, oh, I don't have to show up because somebody else is going to do it. I wanted them to understand, think about it as if you owned a storefront and you decided that you were sick that day.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep your store closed so you don't make money, or are you going to find somebody to open that store for you to make sure that the operation goes on
Yeah.
and that the people that you've hired are taken care of? When you decide to step into management, guess what? You've decided to take part ownership and you are now someone who is important. And this is your piece of the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And every single one of us, we play an important role in that
Absolutely.
dynamic. Yeah. And
And
so, yeah, I like how you said that. Yeah.
there are no little people. We are all here together, and we are one team. And trust me, I have moments to where I'll hop right in and I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll get dirty with everybody else. It's not like I'm going to look at you and say, "Go do." No, let's go do. We're going to do this together, and we're going to make sure that we take care of this because this is
Yeah.
this is our business. It's not
Yeah.
the company. It's our business, and we're going to take care of it together.
Yeah. We say it, but people have to feel it and have to
Hmm.
experience it. I remember working with an executive one time, and I watched when she was running one of the meetings, and she kept repeating, "This is a safe place. This is a safe place. This is a safe place. This is a safe place." And I remember afterwards thinking, okay, if you have to keep repeating
Are
this
you
is
trying
a
to
safe
convince me
place,
or you?
it might not be a safe place. And so as leaders, it's not about just saying things. It's about, have we created the environment where people can feel those things that we said? Why do you feel? Because my question to her would have been, why do you feel the need to keep repeating this is a safe place? Because Keisha, I don't walk into my house and go, this is a loving place. I don't do that. I don't do that. I walk into my house, and the people that live in my house, because of my actions, my repeated actions over time, they know that they're in a loving environment. I don't have to say it. So if I keep having to say it, then that could be a sign that I have not yet created it.
Exactly. And I always say, people talk about trust. If you want to be trustworthy, or if you want to be trusted, you have to be trustworthy.
For
If you want
sure.
to be loved, you have to be loving. So why don't you start by being the thing that you want to see in other people?
For sure. Be it. Yeah. So don't just
And
say it,
yeah,
man. You gotta be it. And then you gotta be it as consistently as you can possibly be.
that's right.
Like, you're not pretending. That's why I've never liked the slogan, fake it till you make it. Fake it till here's my response to that. Fake it till you make it. Okay, I hear you. Then my response to that will be, when you've made it, who are you?
Exactly. Because now you've created this imposter syndrome and you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody else does either.
What do you mean fake it till you make it? Okay, cool. Once you do make it, my question is, who are you? You've been faking it. So now who showed up?
Look, speaking about faking, you made me think of something. I know my son, Elijah. He said to me one time that he always talks about when I get into that, I guess, am I adaptive to where I get a little more soft spoken? And
Mhm.
usually when I answer the phone, I don't even think about it. And he always says that's when I go from Keisha to Karen. And I'm
Keisha
like,
L.
I'm like, why I gotta be
Yeah,
Karen? But
yeah,
he's like, Mom, why do you always change? And I said, I don't even think about it. But
yeah,
it's just like, I have those moments to where maybe I feel like I have to fake it in that moment to
yeah,
where it's like, okay, I've just tried to be more cognizant of that to where I show up as I want to show up who I truly am in
for
every
sure.
situation and not feel like I have to adapt to who I am inside just to appease somebody else.
I think there's a difference between making adjustments and
Hmm.
faking it. So there's times where I make adjustments because of my self-awareness, and my social awareness. I make adjustments, but you're always going to get Ralph. You may get a softer, a soft-spoken version of Ralph, but you're going to get the essence of who Ralph is. So I'm
Hmm.
never going to fake it. But will I make adjustments depending on my environment and what my environment needs? Absolutely, I can do that. But I'm not faking it. You're not going to leave and be like, man, that's a whole different person. No, you're not going to do that. Yeah,
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Um, all right, so we're gonna talk about something here that I know both of us have experienced. Let's talk
yeah,
about going from corporate because we've both been leaders in that space and thrived, and now we're entrepreneurs, and that
yeah.
lane's just a little bit different. We have now the opportunity to go from being a part of the company to being the company.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about your journey from corporate into entrepreneurship, and what did that look like for you?
It has been one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. At the same time, it has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. Keisha, I still remember. So I had a good paying job, and when I decided to leave my job, this is a conversation that I had with my wife. We talked about it. We prayed about it, and we prepared for it, because one of the things I never wanted to do is put my family in like financial duress. I never wanted to do that. So we prepped for this move. But I still remember the last paycheck that I got from my job. And I remember thinking like, oh snap, ain't no more paychecks. Like, after this paycheck right here, I gotta go get
Hmm.
every paycheck. And that was different. That was a different mode that I needed to be in to go get those paychecks. Because before, someone was giving me something. Of course, I was doing the work, but it was automatic. Like every 2 weeks, I'm getting my paycheck. Trust and believe I'm getting my paycheck. Now it's like, no, 2 weeks may go by, 2 months may go by, 4 months may go by, and there is no paycheck. The mind has to adjust to that. And for me, especially as a man, I had to adjust to, you really gotta hunt to eat, and
Hmm.
that was different. And so the other thing I remember experiencing too is, I went from having a schedule of like, I work from 8:30 and I leave at 5:30. I went from that to nobody telling me when I clock in and nobody telling me when I clock out. That was crazy, because now I have so much time in my hands. And if I didn't manage that time, the day would go by and I would say things like, well, what did I do today? I had so many things on my agenda, but I didn't do any of those things, because again, my level of time management compared to when I was in corporate, and time management compared to now I'm an entrepreneur, I had a lot of discipline to incorporate into that. into that transition to be as effective as I needed to be. That was a big switch as well. The other thing too is, when you work for an organization, most times they have all the processes, the systems, and the resources, right? You clock in, they tell you the email platform, they tell you we use this platform to do this, and we use this platform to do that. All you need to do is create a login, and you need to do it. When you're an entrepreneur, you're the CEO, you're the marketing agency, you're the PR person, you're the
HR,
accountant, you're
legal.
HR, you're and I think a lot of entrepreneurs they weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for that because you become everything. Until you hire people, you become everything. So that was a big switch for me as well. But I'd say one of the most rewarding things is just being faithful and seeing what for me in my life on a personal level, what God has done with just me taking a big leap of faith and creating opportunities for me that I could not have created for myself. I got a chance to, as you mentioned earlier, to do a keynote in Cancun, and I won an award for that. I got a chance to do a contest through Grant Cardone, and I got one of the golden tickets and things like that. I got a chance to work with someone who I consider my Michael Jordan. Like, to me, E.T. the hip hop preacher,
Wow.
Dr. Eric Thomas, that's my Michael Jordan in my field. I got a chance to do a speech in front of E.T., and that led to me doing a couple speaking engagements to work with ET and his leadership team. I got a chance to work with credit unions here in Florida, but also going to be working with a credit union in DC. I got a chance to work with insurance agency. I am getting opportunities that I used to once dream about. Now, am I exactly where I want to be? Not yet. But I say not yet because I'm making my way to that place. And even when I get to that place, like just like Jeremy, our coach Jeremy Anderson would ever say, you never arrive, you simply evolve.
Yeah,
Like
evolve.
I'm evolving, and I didn't enjoy the process in the beginning because I wanted to speed up the process. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I've learned that, man, the things you see on a journey are sometimes even more beautiful than that destination that you're trying to create. Because I'll give you an example. So my wife and I, we went to vacation in Jamaica a couple weeks ago. We were celebrating our 9-year wedding anniversary, right? I could get on this plane and be like, hurry up and get me to Jamaica because I'm trying to get to Jamaica. Or I can get on this plane and at some point look out the window and realize, man, this is probably one of the most beautiful sceneries I've ever seen. So sometimes in trying to get to our destination too quickly, whatever we define our destination to be, we miss out on all the beautiful things that are along the way. So God had to slow me down and say, son, I want you to not only look forward to the destination, but I also want you to look out the window and see this beauty that I've created and engage with it. And sometimes that beauty is the discipline that I need to learn. Sometimes that beauty is that time management. Sometimes that beauty is learning how to handle rejection. Because in the business that we're in, a lot of times people tell us no, and you got to be able to deal with that and still go on and ask somebody else and be comfortable with the gift and the calling and the purpose that God has given you. So all of those things where I would call them my moments of looking out the window and seeing the beauty in before arriving at the destination.
That's beautiful. So, entrepreneurship for me is still, I'm in that evolving state, but of course we're
Yeah.
always in the evolving stage. But, I was one of those people who I felt like, okay, like I said, I wanted to get there fast. I was trying to
Yeah.
do all this stuff, move, 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 move. And then it's like the needle's not moving. So just
Mm-hmm.
because you have movement does not mean you're progressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I had to learn to do, like you mentioned, was just to pay attention and stop and think about where I am and look at all the opportunities that are right here in front of me, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to trying to reach something that may not even be for me yet.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dr. Eric Thomas. I remember back in 2019, 2020, right before it was right around COVID, I would listen to ET every morning. And then I went to COVID to where I was listening to him every day because, all day, because we were working from home. You didn't
Yeah.
really have anything. I was actually scheduled. Actually, I was going to go and see him in California, in Los Angeles. It was I believe it was, I'm going to say UOU. I think that's when the UOU book came out, somewhere around there. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go meet this guy. And so I saw the ticket was like $2,000. I'm like, $2,000? That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I still want to meet him, but maybe one day. So as I moved up in leadership and listened to how motivational this man was. And, somehow I came to learn about Next Level Speakers Academy and looked at all the opportunities I could possibly have with Next Level. And I had the opportunity. I thought, you know what, I want to meet ET one day. I
Yeah.
may even stand on stage with him one day. Not only have I met ET, stood on stage with him, but he knows who I am. And it's like to think about the number one motivational speaker in the world
Right.
actually knows who I am.
Yeah.
And he's given me he's critiqued things for me. And to know that I put myself in a position by just thinking about where I wanted to be and making those certain moves and
Yeah.
not being afraid. And now I'm in this space to where, I wasn't fortunate enough to leave my job. My job left me. So I got catapulted into entrepreneurship, but
Yeah.
I wasn't fearful of it. It was like, you know what, I'm gonna take what I've learned so far and try to utilize this to think about where I am now to keep the needle moving to get to where I want to be. And I lean on people like Jeremy Anderson, Dr. Eric Thomas, Coach Crump,
Yeah.
and all these different coaches that we've had an opportunity to speak with and to use their can I say it, use the process that they've gone through to help us grow
Yeah.
from where we are and help us evolve. So when I look at me thinking about that $2,000 that I didn't want to spend, I spent far more than that, but it's
Yeah.
been for self-development, and
Yeah.
I would spend it over every single time because it's helped me get to where I am today.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing is, man, there's been a transformation in me.
Absolutely.
My mindset's different. Keisha, when I went to the Next Level Speakers Academy conference in 2022, 2023. 2023. When I went, I didn't even know there was going to be like an offer. I didn't fully know what I was going to. I was like, man, this guy, I saw Jeremy Anderson. He's powerful. I want to get more. I ended up joining the academy, of course, made a huge investment. But here's why I made the investment. I made the investment because my wife and I, we both went, and I'm sitting there and I thought about it like, man, when I worked for corporate America, they always invested in me. Like I had certain certifications. I was a diversity, equity, inclusion manager. They paid for those certifications. They paid for me to travel. I was a leadership development specialist. They paid for that. They invested in me. And I sat and I thought to myself, people have been investing in me for a long time. When have I invested in myself? And my wife and I, we made the decision to invest in me. And again, Keisha, it's the tangible things are the websites and the coaching and things like that. The intangibles are the things like the relationships, the bonds that have been created, which allows you and I to be sitting here having this conversation. The guys that I've been able to connect with, the ladies I've been able to connect with, the network. I can't put a price on that. And that's why I'll forever be grateful to ET, to Jeremy, to Inky, to Coach Jessica. Coach Jessica, I remember I did a virtual keynote in front of Coach Jess. And she was like, and she stopped me like 7 minutes in. She stopped me. She goes, I don't even know who you are. And I said, what you mean, coach? She goes, I just don't feel like you're giving me all that you can give me. I need you to go back and dig deeper. And when she said that, I went back, dug deeper. That's how I came up with C.A.R.E.
Wow. That's so funny because I work with Coach Jess, and she helped me to come up with my CEO mindset.
Yeah.
So it started out with, I went through a coaching session with her, and man, Coach Jess is phenomenal. I did a session with her for keynote writing, and I only had just two. I didn't even have the CEO framework or anything. It was just, I don't even remember what I had, like eliminate, right? And probably creating my morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, so where's the third one? And I'm like, what do you mean, where's the third one? And she was like, in order to have this well-rounded out, let's start with just three and dig deeper and think about, what you want to say to people. And because what you have to say is powerful, and it's not just about you, it's about what you can share with people. So I thought about that, and that's where the CEO mindset came from. Came from Coach Jess.
Yeah, it's
that framework together.
And that's the thing, especially in this. So every entrepreneur, you need a coach. You need a coach. You need a coach or a mentor. It can't be just you. It should not be just you, because for a lot of us, the what we're looking to do is bigger than just us anyway. So we have to have other people that can speak into it, that can tell us, that can redirect us. Why? Because they coached us and they see value in us. That's the appreciation. I feel very valued by my coaches. That's why it's easy for them to redirect me. So we need that. I remember. So what I used to do, Keisha, is I'll drop one-liners, man. I love quotes. So if I can't find a quote, I create my own quote. I drop quotes all day. And I had a coaching session with Coach Crump, and Coach Crump was like, "Yeah, bro, that's good. That's dope. But corporate is not gonna hire you because you drop dope quotes. You need to create frameworks. You need to create something that guides people through a process." So if you combine that with what Coach Jess said, you need to dig deeper, and you put that with what Coach Crump said, you need to create frameworks. That's how C.A.R.E was born. When I first joined, I thought I could speak to everybody. I was like, I want to speak to, I was like, I'm a gap expert. I want to bridge the gap between fathers and sons. I want to bridge the gap between husbands and wives. And I want to bridge the gap between managers and their teams. So I'm speaking to everybody. I jump on a call one time and Jeremy Anderson goes, "If you for everybody, you for nobody."
Nobody.
Keisha, my immediate response is, "What's wrong with these people? What are they doing to me?" In my head, I was like, "Jeremy, you don't understand. I'm for everybody." And that's what I said in my mind. But then I sat and I thought, I was like, no, he's right. He's not saying that I can't speak to all these people, but he's saying, especially starting out, I need to have a clear understanding of my audience, what their needs are, because no one is going to see me as an expert for all of these things. So you need someone that can redirect you. But again, that's why the coaching piece is important, because I see the value that these people bring, and I see how they appreciate people as in general. So the redirection is easy. It's easy. And because I accept that redirection, it creates elevation. That's why this framework, it works. And with ET, I like you said, during COVID, I used to run all the time, because we were all sitting eating, or I was eating Oreos. I don't know what y'all was eating, but I
was eating the golden Oreos and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I don't do the original. I do that. Golden Oreos is my thing. Double stuffed, and oh, Keisha, this is gonna be bad. This is what I used to do. I don't do this no more. The Lord delivered me. What I used to do is I used to buy double stuffed Oreos and pull them apart, and then take the two stuffed pieces and put them together.
Wow, get out of here.
That's what I used to do.
Oh my goodness.
For sure. So that COVID-15, that thing happened quick. So my wife and I, what we did is we started running. We started running in our neighborhood. And what I would do is I would listen to ET. And I'm like, man, this dude's intense. This dude he's awesome. He's amazing. I still remember I'm running one day and I'm getting ready to stop running. And I'm listening to ET, and he says something I'll never forget. He goes, "Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done." I was like, is this dude?
Yep.
Is this dude next to me? What is going on? So I was like, man, I got to meet this guy one day. But I never thought I would be on a stage with him. And within the matter of, I left my job. October 7th of 2022. October 27th of 2023, I'm on stage with the legendary Dr. Eric Thomas. So again, this journey has been difficult, but it's been rewarding, and God has been so faithful through it all. I still remember when you need a coach because you need people to redirect you. I still remember when we're in the room and CJ says, "Nobody cares."
Yeah.
And that stopped me, because in my head I was like, "Nah, bro, you don't even know. I'm so dope. Everybody care. Everybody need to know what I gotta say." And he goes, "Nobody cares until you make them care." So what a coach does for you, a great coach, is they can dismantle some of those mindsets that you have that are not productive to the future that you're looking to create. That's why you need it. You need it. Pop Anderson told us one time in a Bible study, he was like, "Don't be a legend in your own mind. Be a legend in your own time."
Wow, I love that.
So that's for the people that's trying to rush the process.
Yeah.
Don't be a legend in your own mind. Be a legend in your own time. You need a coach that's going to redirect you, that's going to put you back on the right path. You need that. So entrepreneurship has been a beast, but I said this the other day, all beasts can be tamed. And that's why I'm glad to be on this journey, and to have met amazing people like Keisha L, Blair, who just, Keisha, I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for this journey. Most likely not.
Right.
But I'm grateful that I did, and we've been able to connect over the years. We've been able to help each other out. We've had conversations, deep conversations, and we're having one today. And I'm grateful for all those moments. That's a moment of me looking out the window and not being so focused on getting to my destination. I look out the window, there's Keisha. I look out the window, there's ET. I look at the window, there's Coach Jess, there's Coach Crump, there's CJ, there's all these people. And all of that is important, not just when I land the plane.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. And you know, CJ, I have to give him just shout out because I wouldn't be Keisha L. Blair, but I wouldn't be Keisha the electrician
Yeah.
because you know, when you and I met in Cancun and at the conference for Next Level Speakers Academy. And I had no idea that I was actually going to be speaking in front of Dr. Eric Thomas until I got on that stage.
Mm.
And I didn't know he was going to be critiquing my keynote until after. So it's just like, oh my goodness. So that was a real moment for me to where, you know, when I met a couple of months later, I met CJ in Atlanta at one of the masterminds. And, you know, he basically just told me that I was nervous and I was more concerned about how I felt. And it wasn't about me because, like you said, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mentioned to him about me being Keisha L. Blair and not wanting to mention me being an electrician. He was like, well, why not? And I said, because it's kind of like, you know, the approach that I'm going towards or what I'm being, the coaches are telling me to do. And he was like, well, how do you feel about it? And I said, I don't like it because I've been an electrician for 30 years. For me to not even mention or not talk about it, it's like me trying to disown one of my children. It's a part of me. It's who I am. I wouldn't even be the leader that I am and think the way that I think, do the things that I do if I hadn't gone through that electrical journey. And he said, then don't worry about it. Then you just be you. And he said, matter of fact, I don't want to hear no more about it. From this point forward, you're Keisha the electrician. He took a bite of his sandwich and turned around and walked off. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Like,
that's it.
I don't want to hear no more about it. You Keisha the electrician. So Keisha the electrician.
And you can take that
Yes.
coaching because again, you've seen how much he values people. That's why it's like even if some people might be like, oh, that was harsh. No, but we know his heart.
Yes. And I think about your care framework. So first of all, I approached him. So it was more of him asking me, so what are you going to do about it? How do you feel about it? And, you know, he talked about, you know, basically just how not really what he thought about it, but he asked me about how I felt about it. You know, so he appreciated just my opinion on what I went to ask him for. He turned it back around on me. So that was that redirect. And then beyond that, he's elevated me to where it's like every time I see him, you know, it's like you ask CJ a question. I'm going to tell everybody, if you ask this man a question, you better be prepared for the good, hard truth because he's going to give it to you. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you not only he's not going to tell you what you want to hear. He's going to tell you what you need to hear because that's what we need. And that's the tough thing that leaders have to do. They have to figure out how to lead with caution, but also still be direct and firm in their approach without hurting somebody's feelings. But still, and your feelings might get hurt. But guess what? At the end of the day, you're going to know that, like you said, I care about you and I appreciate you to the fact that I care enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And I think that's where emotional intelligence kicks in, right? So all 4 components. So that's the self-awareness, that's the social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. Because here's what happens. There's times where leaders want to say the truth, but they don't say it in a way that it can be received because they're not aware of who they have in the persona they've created, and they're not aware of who it is that they're talking to. So you think you're being assertive, but it's being received as aggressive.
Exactly.
You think you're being there's a difference. You think you're being kind, but they're receiving it as you're very passive. So that's why the emotional intelligence piece, like we need to know ourselves, but we also need to know who we're talking to. We need to understand our environment because we want to be effective. And without emotional intelligence, we won't be. The message will be blurred.
100%. Oh my goodness. Man, I know, Ralphe, you and I can sit up, we can talk all day. We and you can talk about leadership. We can just talk, we can talk about next level. There's so many things. So I'm looking at my time like, man, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. It feels like we've been for like a hot second.
Yeah. I love it.
So the last question that I want to ask you is, you know, the title of my show is Alpha Intuition.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, when you hear that phrase, what does it mean to you?
Yeah. I think so. Alpha intuition, you know, I think of, for me, I think of awareness. It's awareness. It's if you want to be effective, you have to develop a sense of awareness about yourself and a sense of awareness about others. You have to care enough to be mindful about what's happening in the lives of other people, right?
Mhm.
And then that level of awareness for me, I think is going to dictate what you say, what you don't say, what you do, and what you don't do. So when I think about that, I think of how, as an alpha, male or female, like what is your intuition to respond, or is it to listen?
Mhm.
And for me, my awareness causes me to listen before I respond. And
Mm.
my whole goal is to increase perspective. That's why, again, as you told a story about the person that comes to church who doesn't want to raise your hand, I'll tell you about the person who showed up because they want the pastor to call them out, right? As we talk about the employee that wants private feedback, I'll also talk about the employee that wants public feedback. They want the world to know that they did a good thing. So it's about perception and perspective. How do I broaden your perspective so that you can be effective as a leader? How do I get you away from this one size fits all approach? How do I get you to stop just buying pizza for people and thinking that it's going to fix the problems? No. Some of these employees, they care less about your pizzas. They can care less about Chick-fil-A gift cards. They don't care. What they might want is for you to pull them into the office and say, Keisha, I really like the job that you did on this project. This is the outcome of it. And we're really glad to have you on the team. And they don't want pizza. They don't want a gift card. They don't want none of that. That's the language that they speak. And that's their language that they're hoping to hear from you. So I would say that's what alpha intuition means to me.
Well,
Yeah.
I love it. I want to hear sincere, honest, and true comment or appreciation
Yeah.
that not just something that's just scripted. We don't want you to buy pizza. We want
No.
you to tell me exactly how you feel about what I've done because
Yeah.
even though some people we don't do it for the recognition, but it's always nice to be recognized when you've done a good job.
Yeah, it's and most people want that. I there's very few people that I've met, if any, who would say, I don't want recognition. Now, you may not be doing recognition in the way that they would want, but I
Hmm.
haven't met anybody who says, no, please don't tell me that, this was a good job on the project. I haven't met anybody who's said that. I have met people who said the way they did it though, I didn't feel like it was genuine. I've met people like that. And
Hmm.
so that's what the awareness is about. And that's why, again, I say three things when I go into an organization to do, whether if I'm doing a keynote, workshop, seminar, whatever it is. Well, number one, I want to increase team engagement. That's number one. Number two, I want to decrease turnover. And number three, I want to enhance engagement. Because when you have those three things, then you have an environment where people want to be a part of it. Your goals are met, morale is high, retention is going to be higher because people want to be there. What I read this book a long time ago, Keisha. It's called I Quit and I Forgot to Tell You.
Wow.
There's a lot of organizations that have people who've already quit. They just forgot, but they still show up. They forgot to tell the manager, and you
I
don't want
quit.
to leave.
I
I
forgot.
quit, but I forgot to tell you.
I'm gonna put that link in the chat. I'm gonna have to put it down. Hey, because that book, matter of fact, I'm gonna go get that book. I quit and I forgot to tell you.
I quit, and I
That
forgot
just
to tell you.
I saw so many faces go through my head when you said
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I was like,
it's the
I
truth.
know people we're still here, but mentally they just checked out.
They let and I led a workshop one time, and I try to be very, not I try. I'm very honest with with leaders because I want you to be able to have the tools to be able to make the changes that need to be made. I'm not doing the fluffy stuff. I remember doing a workshop and just assessing the environment. I told one of the leaders, you have some people who they clock out when they get here, they clock in when they leave here.
Let's say that again.
You have some people who they clock out when they get here, they clock in when they leave here.
Oh wow.
You're not getting the best of them
Mm-mm.
because what they really want to do is when they leave here. They come here to do what they have to do. Like they have to pay bills. They have to take care of their people. They have to be here. But because of the environment that you've created here and sadly nurtured here, they're clocked out. And
Yeah.
so we need to understand how do we bring that back to life? Yeah.
Yeah. That's that hierarchy of needs to where, yeah, I got to go to work. I got to make some money. But just because
Yeah.
I get there, that doesn't mean that that two-factor theory for team motivation is going to be satisfied. That makes me want to actually perform once
Yeah.
I clock in. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's important. That's and so that's why I love what I do. And the last thing I'll say, Keisha, and this is important to me because I love solving problems. I love helping people solve problems. And 3 years ago, if you would have asked me, like, Ralph, you're good at this coaching stuff. You're good at giving advice. How are you so, how do you come up with these things so quickly? I would say to you, oh, I'm just built that way. I'm wired like that. My mind's like that. I'm just, that's just how I am. And I remember one day after Coach Crump told me that, man, you need to pray. You need to spend some time in prayer through all this stuff. Like again, I know everybody's not faith-based, but for me, prayer is
Yeah.
integral. It's so important part of my process. And I would pray and I would pray and I would seek God and I would read the word and I would pray. One day, randomly, Keisha, I'm driving and I remember like just it was a crazy experience. It's like God deposited something into my spirit. And it's like I could hear a voice say, why are you taking credit for my deposits?
Mm.
And in that moment, I knew exactly. I hadn't been thinking about, but I knew exactly what that voice was telling me. And then I heard, why are you accepting the message but rejecting the messenger?
Wow.
And I repented right away. I said, God, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because whenever people ask me, how is it that I'm able to do what I do? I always say, I'm built that way. I'm wired that way. That's just who I am. I said, God, from now on, if anybody ever asks me, how do I do what it is that I do? I am going to say, God made me this way because I no longer want to reject the messenger and I no longer want to take credit for your deposits.
I love
So
that.
whatever I do from the past year to the years that are to come is because God made me that way. And I cannot take credit because those are not my deposits. Those are his deposits that other people are experiencing.
Well, that's what leaders do. We give credit where credit's due. So that's
Yeah.
just you giving credit where credit's due. And
Yes,
God deserves
ma'am.
all the glory, 100%.
Amen. Amen.
Man, that's a mic drop. So I'm going to ask you this, man. What is next for Ralphe Jean-Poix? What you got going
Ooh,
on coming
you,
up?
the crazy thing is sometimes I don't think about what's next, and we should as leaders, right? We should think about what's next for our team, what's next for our department, what's the next goal. So I don't give that enough thought. But recently, I started praying some big prayers. The next thing is Ralph wants to, Ralph is going to write a book.
There you go. I
Ralph is
like it.
going to write a book, and Ralph is going to be a household name in the area of leadership development. Not because he sold so many books, but because he helped so many people,
I
because he
love it.
transformed so many environments. Because that C.A.R.E framework, man, that's a gift from God. And so I want that to be in the hand of every leader across the world. So that's next. I'm going to be working on. I will write that book. Not I want to. I will write that
You
book.
will.
Yes, ma'am.
In the
And
words of BT, you can, you will, and you must write
you
that book
must.
because
You
we need
must.
it. People need it. I need
Yeah.
it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We all
Yeah.
need to elevate and develop ourselves continuously. So
For
care
sure.
framework is definitely something that's needed, like you said, in every leader's hand.
Yeah. So that's next. And then continuing to teach workshops, seminars, and public speaking workshops and coaching leaders one-on-one, because there's things that you can do one-on-one that you can't do in a group setting. There's
That's
people
right.
that, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you try to build that psychological safety. If there's 15 other people in the room, and you don't know what the relationships are within the room, but they have to be here.
Yeah.
You can't break them down, right? So continuing to do one-on-one coaching. So I offer one-on-one coaching services. I do workshops and seminars and keynotes. Again, the whole purpose is just to transform environments so that people can not just be there, but want to be there, and you get the best out of them. So that's what's next.
And I love it. Look, I know y'all listening out there. If you are somebody and you know that you need Ralph at your company, you make sure that you call him, you email him.
Yes,
His address is on here. He's on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the above. And also his email address is booking at RJPspeaks.com. Man,
yes,
you know, you guys, even if you are not in management yourself, like Ralph already told you, you are a leader.
you're a
And
leader.
we all need to develop ourselves personally and professionally in leadership. So
Absolutely.
And look, if I don't think I said this at the beginning, man, you guys know, y'all make sure y'all got to like and subscribe. Look, I gave y'all some good energy today. Y'all, look, we've been on here for almost an hour and a half.
Yes.
My longest interview today because we just chopping it up. So I'm definitely going to have you back because there's so many things that we could possibly tap into. Because leadership is not just at work. Leadership is something it's a lifelong journey, and it's something in every aspect of our lives. We have to make sure that we continue to develop ourselves as leaders in everything, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's at church, or just all these different avenues. So, and all that rounded up together helps you become the CEO of your life.
You know, one of your guests said this one time, and I heard her at a conference, Aisha Freeman.
Oh, yes, my girl. Just rebuilt the temple.
And she was like, and she was doing her keynote. And she goes, wherever I went, there I was.
Yes. Oh, I love that phrase. I was like, oh,
that hit me.
Everywhere I went, there I was.
And I think that ties in. Wherever I went, there I was. That ties in with what you said. You're not a leader at work, and then you turn it off, and then you're not a leader at home. Like you need to carry that with you everywhere you go. So how do we sharpen your skills so that way, no matter what environment you're in, you're the effective leader that you need to be. So I love how you summarize that. Keisha, this was so much fun. Again, if you're looking for a coach or one-on-one coach or someone to come in and work with your teams, I do a lot of work with teams. Definitely reach out, RJPspeaks.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Keisha, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. This was so much fun. Like you said, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half. It felt like we just started talking.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to come back 100% because, like I said, I'm going to be in this season of cracking the corporate relationship code.
Yeah.
And, when you get ready to drop that book, so wait, do you have a projected timeline for when the book's supposed to drop?
I don't have a projected timeline yet, but that's the next.
Okay. Because you're going to have to come back when this book drops. We're going to have to make sure we get it out here to all these people are in leadership. We're all in leadership, So everybody needs it. So I'm waiting on that care. I'm waiting on that book about communication. I said it so wrong. What is it? It's coaching, appreciation, redirect, and elevate.
Elevate people. That's right.
Love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. This has been such a phenomenal show. I love it, man. Yeah, look, Ralphe already told you guys how to get in touch with him. You need to bring him into your organization because he will give you the practical tips needed to help take your team to the next level and boost team morale, engage your team, and also to reduce employee
turnover.
Rate.
Yeah, we don't want that turnover.
We got to make sure that you keep those employees because they're not only going to want to show up, they're going to want to show out.
That's right.
So once again, my boy, Mr. Classic Man, RJP.
I
love it. All right. Well, you guys, I thank you guys so much for tuning in today. This has been such a phenomenal episode. So as always, you guys know I love to listen. I'm hearing from my listeners. If you have any questions or topics that you would like me to discuss on future episodes, please make sure that you drop me a message down in the comments. And I'm going to make sure that I list that book. What did you say the name of that book was, Ralphe?
I forgot to tell you.
But I forgot to tell you. I'm going to make sure I put that down in the comments so you guys can go and get that on Amazon. And I'm going to make sure I put Ralph's contact information there as well so you guys can reach out to him because if you hadn't already looked him up and tried to book him, there's something wrong with y'all. Ain't nothing wrong with me. But if you like today's episode, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this with someone else.
Yes.
And then you guys can always connect with us on social media. And remember that the journey to the top of any mountain begins with one single step. So don't stop, keep climbing. You guys already know, like I like to say, make sure that you keep that energy. Peace.